want us to get into the second segment, which is the questions for the poll, as we put it. I think we have 3 questions for you at the moment. So as we get ready to put the poll up, I'd just like to remind you again that you're listening to ECCB Digital Dialogues. Our focus today is pandemic and banking. Almost every one of us have some kind of relationship with a bank or credit union. Therefore, the information that's being shared this morning would be of particular importance to all of us. But also for the businesses, and you're hearing from a business person talking about how you can adapt some of the tools and some of the things that you can look at as you attempt to survive and ultimately thrive during this pandemic. So again, thanks to the panel. I'd now like us to go to our poll for today. And this is where you get to come in and weigh in with your answers. So with that, I'd now like to ask Lyndon. Lyndon is our colleague who is on the poll today, Lyndon Jacasal. Lyndon started as a Bright Spark, one of our interns. He's now a permanent member of staff. He originally comes from Grenada, but we have Bright Sparks from St. Lucia, we have from St. Kitts and Nevis, and we are expecting to take more from all our member countries as time goes on. So Lyndon will now put up the poll. And the first question is this: given the current environment, do you believe the immediate financial relief offered by the loan repayment deferral outweighs the future cost? Given the environment, do you believe that the loan deferral program, the benefits of that program outweigh future costs? And that's your time to weigh in on that. So that's the first question. The responses are yes, the benefits outweigh the costs. No, the future increased financial burden is not worth it. C, it depends. D, I do not know. So those are the 4 responses. And right now, persons are beginning to cast their vote. And again, this is real-time voting and full transparency because the results are online. So you can see them for those who are viewing as the votes are cast. So there you have it. So far, we have 32 persons have already put in. We're going to give you a few more seconds, maybe another 30 or so, and then we're going to move to the second question. So in case you're just joining us, you are listening to ECCB Digital Dialogues. Our focus today, pandemic and banking. And we are now in the second segment where we are looking at the poll, which is where we ask viewers, listeners to weigh in with their responses. So far, 56 people have cast their vote. 16 people say yes, the benefits outweigh the costs. 12 people say no, the future burden is not worth it. And 28 people say it depends. It depends. One person says, I don't know. And I would suggest that that person who doesn't know, you perhaps need to consult your banker, credit union, and they might be able to assist you with making up your decision, making your mind up about this program. So that 10 seconds, and then we'll move to the second question. Because I want to allow time to take some questions in the next segment. So final 10 seconds for question 1. And so of the 63 persons who cast, 29 persons said it depends, 20 persons said yes, the benefits outweigh the cost, and 14 said that the cost is too high, it's not worth it. And 1 person said, I do not know. So those are the results of the first question. Let us go to question 2, please. The second question is this. The deferral program is being offered for an initial period of up to 6 months. Do you think there's a need to extend the period of the offer? Question again. The deferral program is being offered for an initial period of up to 6 months. Do you think that there's a need to extend the period of this program? That's our second question. And very quickly, I can tell you 43 people have already cast, 34 people now say yes, 13 people say no. Clearly, it depends on where you sit and what your needs are. But so far, the majority of people, by a long shot, believe that there may be a need or is a need to extend the offer, the period of the program. And I know I can say that there is some discussion going on about that for those who may need it. And I think that question will probably come up. I'm just looking on screen and I see from Facebook, it looks like that there's a question on that as well. So we'll take that shortly. But let's give a final 30 seconds for this next question, final 30 seconds. And then we are going to, so this time we've had 6 to 9 persons who have cast their vote, and 55 of those, the overwhelming majority, have said yes, the program should be extended. So we thank you for that. We'll close on the second question, and we'll go to question number 3. Question number 3. Here's the question. What digital options would you like to see banks offer more of or start to offer? What digital options would you like to see banks offer more of or start to offer? And the options are digital currency, which is digital cash, digitization of the processes for opening an account and applying for credit. 3, use of analytics to provide financial advice and service. And 4, enhanced cybersecurity safeguards. So that's the third and final question in the poll. Give you a moment to respond, and I want to thank our colleague Lyndon Jackassel for assisting us with the poll today. Lyndon is in our Management Information Services Department. And I shout out Lyndon because we're very keen to see our young people operate in the space of IT, data analytics, cybersecurity. Those are areas in demand. So in case you're wondering where job opportunities are coming from, I can tell you right now that there's a demand for people in cybersecurity, for people in IT, data analytics, for example, social media specialists, among others. Those are where the new jobs are coming from. So if you're making a career choice or you're deciding where to train, those are good areas to train in. Take it from me. Okay, so question number 3, we're going to give you another 30 seconds on that. And for those of you just joined, the question is, you are listening to ECCB Digital Dialogues. We are in the second segment, which is our poll. Today our focus is on pandemic and banking. And we have 3 questions. And the third and final question in our poll today is, what digital options would you like to see the banks offer more of or start to offer? And there are 4 options: digital cash, digitization of processes to open an account and to apply for credit. 3rd, the use of data analytics to help with advice and customer service. And 4, cybersecurity. And it's interesting that 68 people have actually cast their votes, and 54 of such persons have said, well, I guess people have used multiple, because clearly we have a lot more than 68 people who have voted in terms of the option. So let me put it this way. 54 responses say digitize the process for opening an account and applying for credit. I agree with you. I didn't get to vote, but I actually agree with that. I think that's really important. And I know for the banks that requires a change in infrastructure and approach, but I certainly believe that more and more online offerings need to be available. If you think about the largest mortgage lender in the United States, it's Quicken Loan, and it's all online. Now, I know we can't always compare ourselves with the US, and there are reasons why bankers need to sit and talk to customers. But I think increasingly we want to be able to see people use online channels, especially in this period of physical distancing. I think we also are seeing 33 people are saying digital cash, which is interesting because, as you know, we'll be launching our EC Digital Cash pilot shortly. So there is significant interest there. 35 responses are to use more analytics, and I absolutely agree with that as well. And 38 people said cybersecurity. So what we have there is that people have an interest in all digital channels because they all speak to digital engagement. And obviously cybersecurity is important. And that is that's an issue that our banks and the central bank are working on. I can tell you a lot of work is going on that right now. Enhanced cybersecurity. And there's a big project by the World Bank called Caribbean Digital Transformation Program, which one of the key priorities under that project, which was recently approved by the World Bank, is cybersecurity. So you'll be hearing more about that. And this is something that you have to do across countries and across institutions. So it's not just a country thing. So thank you very much. I think we had a good response on that, and that's useful information for us. So with that, we have come to the end of our poll, our second segment, and I want to move swiftly to our third and final segment. Let's go to our third segment, questions from our viewers and listeners. First question, given the protracted uncertainty of the economic recovery, what might be the banking sector's next move or strategy to provide relief to its customers beyond the original moratorium period? Well, Richard, clearly that one is for you. Any comments?
Yes, Governor, I will comment to say that the banks will continue to work with customers. The strategy of the deferral program, I think, is our best card to date. It is not our only card. The question of financing at reduced interest costs to the customer is an option, because as the economy rebounds, people need to retool, redesign certain processes. Digitalization is going to be a big part of any operations going forward, and financing would be needed. I think another key one would be where banks need to play a more advisory role. In other words, commercial banks, it is not enough for us to approve a loan, disburse the loan, and wish the customer well, especially if they are small and medium-sized enterprises. I think banks have to find a way to hone in on the other support mechanisms that are in the industrial development corporations, that are in the advisory services in the various ministries and so on, because there are resources under various funding agencies that are available to help small businesses succeed. But commercial banks don't provide what I call an escort service, a hand-holding service. That is not done by us. And we cannot leave it up to the development banks only, though that has been the case traditionally. But I think rebooting, resuscitating these businesses require banks to do more than simply lending at whatever rate you lend people, because they have to repay the loan anyway. So some businesses we know, even if you lend them at 0 interest rate, will fail because they cannot generate the cash flows to repay the loan. And what we have to do is to find ways and means, regardless of the interest rate we use in pricing the risk, is to help these small businesses to strive beyond simply loan disbursement. And then, Governor, as you know, we have the Eastern Caribbean Partial Credit Guarantee Facility. I think the utilization of that by commercial banks will be a key part of our next move going forward. I know it's early days, still not yet fully launched. And when it is, I want to encourage, my colleague bankers across the region to make full use of it in helping businesses to succeed and thrive going forward.
Right. Richard, thanks for that. And of course, I cannot pass up the invitation to add a word on the Partial Credit Guarantee Corporation, which you mentioned. And so for those who are listening and don't know what we're talking about, this is a special program approved by the Monetary Council with the involvement of all of our member countries, or most of our member countries. And essentially what it will do, it will guarantee loans made by our financial institution, banks or credit unions, up to $300,000, 75% of that. So you're talking about a guarantee of about $225,000. So again, for the small business sector that Giselle has spoken about, that Richard has mentioned, they are particularly in need of that kind of support to access credit. And that program was launched on a pilot basis at the end of June in St. Lucia and Dominica, and it will be expanded to the other countries soon. I know in September, I believe they're looking to do a big launch, public launch around it, and there will be more to be said about that. But as you said, that will be an additional offering to support businesses in this period. By the way, Richard, as you were speaking, I have colleagues in the virtual room with me who are shaking their head. This issue of how banks treat with customers, it is such a big issue. People's relationship with a banker, it's not just financial, it's psychological, it's so many other things involved. And sometimes in the past, people have felt that bankers are not always human. They don't always understand. So I think hearing from you today really helps people to appreciate that the bankers get it. You know, they feel in the customers and they want to have that kind of relationship. And as you said, that includes hand-holding where necessary. And the development banks are trying, but they have limited capacity. So you do need the commercial banks to play a bigger role where that is concerned, even though that has not been their traditional role or their expertise. So I think your comments on those initiatives are welcome. Let's go back to the, right, thank you. Let's go back to the board and let's see what else we can pick up. So here's a question. Question number 3 says, because of the pandemic and loss of jobs, many of our young people are between ages 25 to 35 have given up hope in being able to acquire property or even to pursue their educational dreams. What incentives do the banks and other financial institutions have in place for such persons? Richard, I think that's you again. Let me just repose the question. Because of the pandemic and loss of jobs, many young people between ages 25 and 35 have given up hope in being able to acquire property or even to pursue their educational dreams. What incentives do the banks and other financial institutions have for such persons? Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, Governor, this one is a difficult one because it's not a pure banking question. It has to do with economics and some sociology. What I could say is, from my own experience, we have to think of these things in a long-term way. So the bank for which I work, we have a product called the Education Investment Plan, where we have encouraged parents from birth to save units of $25 each. You can buy any number of units you want. And enter into a silver program, a gold program, a platinum program, so that at primary, secondary, or tertiary level, there's a seed fund that you can all leverage to send your child to higher education. And tied to that is a scholarship program that we run by, luck of the draw, so to speak. It's not based on needs or any such thing. It got to be in a program. And when the pandemic broke, as a corporate citizen, we had a choice to make. We could have distributed food hampers, support people in psychological and counseling sessions and so forth. But we figured that education and that generation of youth is potentially at risk. So what we did, we ramped up the scholarship program. I think, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 7-fold in terms of the number of scholarships and the value of the scholarships and what they get with it in terms of digital devices and stuff like that. So I think as corporate citizens, there are things that banks can do beyond lending money to people, because like I said before, the interest rate could be 0, it could be minus 2%. They still have to repay because the money is on rent from depositors. So it's the best response I could give, Governor, from my own experience. Now, intellectually, I really cannot offer anything new. And therefore, I'll defer to other members of the panel who may wish to chime in.
Right. No, thanks, Richard. I'm going to invite Giselle if she wants to comment, but just to make a plug for the UWI, University of the West Indies, which this month is doing its Global Giving Month. And so that was launched on Emancipation Day here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and it's being done across the region, where alumni, corporate citizens, friends of UWI are being invited or encouraged to make a contribution to education. And the reason why I say this now on the back of what you just said, Richard, and we are both our alumni of UWI, is because in this period of the pandemic, several of our students, at least I understand about 10,000 students are at risk of not being able to continue or to complete their education because of the financial fallout. And so what UWI is hoping is that citizens like us, and I can say I've already made a contribution to that cause, but of course we must all try to do that, is to help these young people so that we don't lose their future. Because if we lose their future, we lose the future of our region. And we cannot afford to step back, as Sir Hillary put it, in tertiary education right now. We have to step forward. We can't retreat, is the way he put it, in tertiary education in this period. And so the decision that you took as the CEO of Corp, I salute you for that, because I think it's far-sighted. We have to deal with the immediate, but we always have to have an eye on the long term, because that's where ultimate prosperity will come. And so I think that was a good corporate decision, and I thank you for that. So I want to encourage everybody, friends of UWI, alumni, during this period to give and to help support our students to complete their education and make their contribution to our development. Giselle, do you want to say anything on this question? If you wish.
The St. Kitts Nevis Chamber of Commerce, one of the areas that when we spoke about training earlier, we have been actually encouraged into getting into a program where we can encourage young people to, how do you interview? I think one of the challenges a lot of young people have today is, anyone can get on the computer and download a template to prepare a resume. There are many different programs for you, but does it really say who you are? And I think one of the areas that we're working on, that we're planning to work on with a facilitator, is have her engage a young group coming out of college into the workforce. How do they interview? How do they prepare that resume? What does it say about them? There's a big gap where you are actually interviewing, all of us are employers, and you read about this individual and all of the wonderful assets, but then when they interview with you or they present themselves, often the two do not quite match, and so no fault of their own, they just haven't been taught. So a lot of it is grooming young people, how to present themselves, how to interview, how to answer the questions, preparing for this process, because there's a lot of competition, yes, for jobs, and it'd be even more so as we go forward in COVID. But Chamber helping to groom them so that, and train them in skills that are really relatable and tangible, so that even if you don't have a university degree, do you have exposure in this area? Have you worked? Have you done an internship? Bringing them into internship programs that are meaningful, and not just a college doing an internship program and throwing students into any environment because they're looking for space to put them, but putting them into spaces that make sense. Their interest, what are they interested in learning? What is their passion? What is it that they're passionate about? And placing them and having a proper placement program that can bring out the best in them and their own interest actually in the job. And so I think the skill set is critical. And those are the areas that are going to make young people more employable as we come through this COVID. And more open-minded, because I hate to say, but the larger, the big paying jobs, I think many companies are going to realize that the benefits that they were once able to offer, the packages that they were once able to offer, are going to have to be downsized for some time until businesses can really catch their breath. And when are we going to get back up to speed, or what we call normal? I don't know that there'll ever be a normal again. There'll certainly be a new normal. Going in with an open mind into interviews, and not, the expectation is huge for some young people. They're going to come out of university and they're expecting this amazing salary and benefits. And yes, those were there, but many of them going to be there now. So learning to actually, kind of reduce your expectations somewhat in this new world, and be more open-minded about what you might have to do to earn an income going forward. So I think it's a lot of change from Richard saying that this is very much a sociology issue. I think you're very right, that a lot of it does affect our minds and how we think, and our society in general, and changing our mindset going forward.
Right. Giselle, the mindset issue is so important. From the jump of this pandemic, I've said repeatedly that to get through it, we need to adopt a growth mindset. And a growth mindset simply is about reframing challenges into opportunities and seizing those opportunities. And I like how you just explained the need for us to manage expectations. But also, to see that, there are opportunities there. Mm-hmm. If we are willing to look for them, not in the same way, not in the same things, but we can create new possibilities for ourselves and our families and our region. But the mindset has to be different, and that's a big part of this response to the pandemic, to be honest. It goes way beyond financial and economic issues. So thanks for that. Chris, do you want to chime in at this stage?
Governor, I just want to add that in all of it, we must remain hopeful. Even for the person asking the question and the persons between the ages of 25 and 35, you must remain hopeful. As I mentioned earlier, it's an economic downturn. Yes, it's something that is unprecedented, that we've never seen. But I believe we said that for many of the economic downturns and the crises that we had before. So whether it's a global financial crisis, the oil shocks, the technology, bursting of the technology bubble, even going back to the Great Depression, persons who would have gone through that would have thought that this would not come to an end. But they all come to an end, and there's always a rebound. So I think persons in that age group, what they have to do is to prepare themselves for the rebound. So you may not be able to go to university at this time, and you may have to delay it by a year or two, as the case may be, based on your financial circumstance. But that doesn't mean that you cannot be engaged in personal and professional development. There are a lot of free online courses, whether they through EDX, where there are a lot of American universities and that offer these free courses that you can take that can help to build you professionally and personally in the time frame while you wait for that opportunity. So it's a matter of remaining hopeful, knowing that things will turn around and there will be an upturn, and prepare yourself to take advantage of it when it comes.
Right. Thank you for that, Chris. Very good. So let's go back to the questions. We're going to see how many we can squeeze in the next 15 minutes or so. What are affordable investment opportunities that may be currently available for persons wishing to invest locally? Giselle, I don't know if you want to comment on that. What are affordable investment opportunities that are currently available for people of our region to invest locally? Any thoughts?
Anything that comes to mind, that I'm initially aware of. But I do think that during this crisis, the saying that if you get limes, you make lemonade. So there are some people who are taking advantage of that and investing in areas where maybe it could be construction, purchasing. Just yesterday, I had someone approach me about purchasing a home. More than one person this week told me they're purchasing a home. And I said, wow, it's interesting because they're getting it at the best possible price right now. So I think what we can say is this is the time for negotiation. It's a good time if you had a project planned that you may have, for whatever reason, held back, but you have the loan. It was secured previous to COVID. and you have held back, it's the time to probably negotiate better rates with your construction guys, to your materials. I think this is a time where risk takers jump in and make investments, because we need the economy to keep ticking. We need construction. We need homes to be sold. And those people who have the wherewithal or the ability will take the opportunity and they will invest now. And so I think outside of that, I'm not aware of any particular investments, but I do know that even on our own board here at the Chamber, we know that TDC group of companies is going to be engaging in a project, in a home project construction starting by the end of this year. So there are businesses who are going to, although they might have had quite a hit from tourism, because they may have had an arm that was pretty involved in the tour sector or the cruise sector, looking to diversify and put more energy into other areas. So I think from an investment side, it's thinking outside of the box, as I think we spoke about earlier, and remodeling yourself as a business and even as an individual, taking the plunge in some areas where you feel you're able to do it. Make that investment, whether it's buy shares, if you think the return is going to be quite because you're not getting it, in interest at the bank necessarily. You might so there are very options. I think you just need to keep your mind open and be willing to take risk at this time, even in this environment.
Right. Thanks for that. Good. So let's take a few more. So let's pause. Question 5: has the pandemic affected the rollout of the digital cash? If so, how exactly has it been affected, and what is the plan? So yes, it has delayed us a little bit. Originally, we had planned to launch the digital cash project in June. Because of the pandemic, we've needed more time to complete what we would have done, because of course, everybody, central bank, commercial banks, other partners who are very involved in dealing with the pandemic, including lockdowns, not being able to do certain things. So we are now in the phase of onboarding pilot partners, using the app, education. We've done, as you know, 4 of these sessions on the dialogues on the digital cash project, and we will be announcing our new date for launch. But we are definitely moving forward. The other thing we did say is that whereas we had said we would start with 4 countries and pilot with 4, we're still going to do that, but we want to move more quickly to the other 4 countries. So we are likely to extend the pilot beyond 6 months to allow us to be able to get the additional 4 countries, so that all member countries will be able to be part of the pilot. And so you can look forward to that. Next question: should we not talk about what the Caribbean countries need to do to reboot their economies? Until and unless we realign our incentive policies to support outward-facing business opportunities, for example, online services and products to international markets, the solidity of the banking system itself is in question. So the issue here is realignment or rebooting our economies. Richard, take a quick stab. I know we don't have much time, but do you want to say anything on that?
Yes, Governor, I think the issue of being export-oriented is settled, that is what we have to do. You did say tourism is 60% of these economies, so that's where we have to lay the emphasis. And I would say that, you cannot jumpstart a tractor trailer with a pen-light battery. I think we know that. You need a more powerful engine, a more powerful ignition, for want of a better word. So our economies will not be rebooting and gaining momentum unless tourism returns. And tourism only returns when there is strong growth and low unemployment and that kind of stuff in our source market. So we need to prepare for that, but to say we can reboot by doing backyard gardening and stuff like that, that's not going to work. So we know where the emphasis is, and the program on civil aviation, air travel, how do we quickly put the protocols in place for the return of stopover visitors and stuff like that. That's where the emphasis has to be. Yes, there can be new things coming out of the crisis, I agree, but I think getting better at the old things is where the emphasis is supposed to be. Doing the old things better. Tourism is already 60%. Let's do it fast. Let's do it better, and play a role in helping the civil aviation authorities globally to treat with this thing that should be, in my view, an international conference and convention on air travel in our COVID environment. Yeah. Each country can be doing their own thing and having their own rules.
I absolutely agree with you. Just en passant, only yesterday the Oasis Authority, which are the heads and also had CMOs and ministers of tourism and so on involved. And that discussion was about the testing protocols. In a nutshell, how we try to really coordinate that at source before you fly and also on arrival to protect. But you're absolutely right about cooperation, global cooperation on this pandemic. And that's a particular example you raised, the issue of travel and the testing arrangements and so on for that. So more of that will come, but there is work going on behind the scenes on that. Let's take a couple more questions before we wrap. Let's go down. We've covered those. We've covered the moratorium. We've covered tourism in part. What plans are in place, if any, for a spike or surge in non-performing loans? I think Chris spoke to that earlier. I think that was covered. Let's move on. Is it wise to seek a mortgage during this pandemic? I think Giselle mentioned it, but Richard, do you want to comment on that? Is it wise to seek a mortgage in this pandemic?
The answer, Governor, is yes. I mean, we are fully open for business as commercial banks. As I said before, we succeed only when we have, thriving customers, both businesses and individuals. So there are opportunities there. There are people who will not be impacted, as Giselle said. Land prices might be depressed. Housing prices might come in, and let's talk. We are open for business. And as we have seen with the numbers, people were fearful in the beginning that maybe 60, 70, 80% of the customers would be under deferral arrangement of some kind. No, we are not there. Mind you, risk-taking requires you to look forward and to anticipate. Now, to the extent that some people take the position that the worst of this crisis is ahead of us and not behind, you need to calibrate that and decide, will I take the risk? But through every crisis, there are opportunities, and of course, there will be opportunities for customers and banks alike.
Right. Thanks for that. And when I asked you in a 5 or 7 minutes for your final comments, you can say whatever you want, but I'd also like you to comment on opportunities, if you have not already mentioned those earlier. So let's go back to the questions. Digitization is key towards ECCU facilitating transaction and money flows from clients and customers outside of the ECCU. What tools are currently available to businesses in the ECCU? Is one question. And two, what programs and initiatives are being undertaken to increase the availability of tools that allow small businesses in our region to facilitate online digital payments with better commission rates than what currently exists from international intermediaries? We've covered that in part. I think the banks are offering their digital payment channels more and more, some of them without charge, or certainly at lower charge than other platforms or other channels. So for example, obviously it's cheaper if you use online than if you go into the bank or you use the ATM. And in this period of physical distancing, we are encouraging people to use the online channels. It's safer, it's faster, and it is cheaper for you. Of course, the banks have to pay a cost, remember that, but for you, the customer, it's cheaper. The digital cash project that the ECCB is working with our partners to launch this year. So clearly, that is another initiative. There may be a few more things, but I think we could probably move on to see if we could grab a couple more questions quickly. Given the current depressed economic environment in the ECCU, tax revenues would be challenged. Yes, they are. Does the ECCB have any plans to assist the region's governments in this regard? So just very quickly, I could answer that. We have provided, we've lowered our discount rate, which is the rate at which we lend our governments. That rate is 2%. Before the pandemic, it was 6.5%. And we do have a sum that we can lend to all of our member governments. Not a lot of money. It's about $700 million. And we have allocations for each member country. And we are making those available as required, as requested. So yes, to the extent of our means, we are making resources available to our government for liquidity. Partial credit guarantee offered to small businesses. Yes, so you will hear more about that. I'm sure the CEO of the Partial Credit Corporation will be speaking to all of us, I think in September with the launch. So I will leave that for them to explain. But it will be to support small businesses, including in tourism, in ICT, other areas. I'm very keen to ensure that women are supported, women in business are supported. So the policy position, I want them to have a bias for all businesses, small businesses, but especially for women in business, because that we know is a very important demographic. And when you think about the fact that at least 52% of our households are female-headed in our region, you understand that if you touch a woman in business, you touch in a household, and that woman, we need to give women all the support that we can. So we support all businesses, but I do make a special plea for the women in business at this time. We're going to take our final question on the screen, and it's multiple parts. It says there are only there are two other looming issues that both banks and customers will have to treat with at the end of the relief period. One, higher debt service ratios, greater debt load in a reduced revenue environment. Two, reduced or in some instances, zero equity and reduced collateral values. I would like to hear the views of Richard and Christopher. Never call you Christopher, Chris. In respect of A, realities customers must begin to prepare for, especially businesses, and B, implications for banks from a regulatory perspective. So Richard and Chris, I don't know if you got the question, but any views?
Yeah, well, Governor, I think Chris spoke to it earlier, that yes, these are clear possibilities for individuals and for banks that, we know we have to face. Right. So, and people talk about the new normal. So obviously things have to be recalibrated.
Yes.
And will be recalibrated. I would suggest with some measure of collaboration between the ECCB and the Bankers Association. As I said in the beginning, there is a bond between the Central Bank and the Bankers Association to ensure that we work together to have a strong, stable financial system. And that is what it's all about. We comply with the regulations, we honor what has to be done, but in moving forward, there's always consultation, there's always dialogue between, ECCB and ourselves. So I think people can rest assured that coming out of this crisis, things would be different, but they would not be treated with in such a way as to imperil the safety and soundness of the financial system, the bedrock of which is your customers' ability to continue meeting the obligations to the banks who have rented you depositors' funds. That's the bottom line.
Thank you, Richard, for that. Thank you for that. Rented depositors' funds. Thanks for reminding us of that. Chris, any additional comment? You did cover it.
It would be along the same lines of what Richard has said. It's a collaboration and a partnership, ourselves and the commercial banks. I think we have to bear in mind that point about the banks being able to restructure the client's loans. I think that's key. So while there may be a larger debt because of the accumulation of interest, there's an opportunity to restructure the loan, perhaps to let your payment, your monthly payment remain the same, whether by the reduction in the interest rate or extending the term to maturity. But the banks have that leeway or that flexibility to work with the customer to restructure the loan, so that the customer, there is not a burden, as Richard spoke of, on the customer being able to meet that obligation. But it's about the partnership and the collaboration in order to assist in the customer while maintaining financial stability.
Right. That's the challenge we have. Right. So thank you very much. I now want to invite our panelists to offer their final comments. And I'd like to start with Giselle, the president of the Chamber of St. Kitts and Nevis, on your thoughts, including any opportunities. Any final thoughts from you, Giselle?
Yes, I would just like to end, I think, on the same note that we just spoke to about commercial banks lending rates. There has been a call by our members for better and more competitive interest rates if they're going to survive through COVID. For those who have especially been hit, who are closed for the last 3-4 months and don't hope to open, probably in St. Kitts in particular, we won't see a reopening. I think I just got information that we've announced the opening of our borders for October 1st.
Breaking news. Thanks for that, Giselle.
We just got that news. So for those who have been closed for some time, and even when we do reopen, it's going to be very restricting. It's going to be very phased approach. And I think as the Chamber's president, I'll ask the commercial banks, to please consider their clients' needs in this crisis and looking at better, more affordable interest rates to help them to get through this period and the upswing when it does take place. So yes, they need the operational, they need the help to keep the operations open, and those who are closed to reopen. That will assist them with some cash flow. And they're not strangled by interest rates. So that is a call I'm making publicly for the commercial banks. The digital banking sector, I think that has been a huge help to businesses. Just from being able to be more efficient, I think. Many of us who use the digital banking options, who have been thrown into it, whether you wanted it before or not, now with COVID, you're just automatically using it. So I think it has forced businesses to use it. I think it has made us more efficient, less runs to the bank unnecessarily. Time is money, as we know. Sitting at your desk and being able to do all your wires, make the transfers, etc., all of your banking needs right there in front of you is great. One of the challenges I think we find as a private sector is with all of the digital banking and a lot of direct deposits taking place, a lot of ACH payrolls are being done online now, but in particular direct deposits from your clients. I think one of the challenges is that so many businesses are now making the direct deposits, but they aren't necessarily giving you all the details when they make those deposits. So some businesses are finding a challenge with reconciliation, being able to reconcile these funds. Where did they come from? Because some businesses are not being very vigilant in giving the information required. So that's an area I think just needs to be tweaked a bit and doing better. I think for opportunities, we need to look more at manufacturing from our economy side in terms of, yes, we will always be dependent on tourism. I don't think that will ever change. The Caribbean is just sought after. It's an area that, tourists from across the world love to come to visit the Caribbean, and we need that business. But I think it's being able to diversify ourselves a bit, looking at our manufacturing sector in St. Kitts and looking at more exports. How can we beef up the manufacturing sector, give them more support so we can employ more people in that area, more concessions by government so that we can become more competitive in the manufacturing area. I think from a tourism standpoint, we are looking to see how we can market ourselves to other destinations that we currently didn't, probably focus on that much. We're so heavily dependent on the United States. We're now looking to Canada, places like maybe more European tourists to come in, expanding our aim at the yachting industry. St. Kitts has never really tapped into that in a great way, but we know, many of you know from living in the Grenadines, etc., St. Martin, Antigua, that's an area of great value and wealth that we have not tapped into. And it's an area that we are hoping, and the government is looking at quite positively at attracting the yachting sector into St. Kitts. So we're looking to diversify our tourism product also. Agriculture would be the last area that I would say that we do need to push more. You again in the Windward Islands, those of you who don't, that's your mainstay, your agriculture. Many of us here in St. Kitts have many farmers here from the region. And so I think teaching us Kittians to really understand that there is money to be made in agriculture. And the government has put some funds in agriculture. I think it's 5 million. I stand to be corrected on that figure, but assisting and growth. And the chamber has a spot on the committee, the marketing committee for agriculture now. So hopefully we'll see further development in that area, so we'll be more self-sufficient from a food supply sense.
Right. Thank you, Giselle, for that. Chris, final comment?
No, Governor, I just want to touch on the point in terms of the opportunities as it relates to digitization and digital channels. From where I sit, I guess I see across the board in terms of all of our licensees. And I think in the new normal, as we get out of the pandemic, as hopefully we get out of the pandemic and the new normal, I think banks would have to evolve from being product-centric to be more customer-centric in terms of meeting their customers' needs digitally. I often say that banks have a treasure trove of personal data on all our clients. So from their deposit side to their lending side, you basically know all you need to know about your customers in terms of their financing. If you've issued a debit card or a credit card, you also know about their spending habits, where they're spending their funds. So banks have a lot of personal data. And I think the banks have to utilize that data to improve their customer service to each and every customer. I think it's no longer a way of where we move in terms of having a product that's available to all clients, but we have to then target individual customers, knowing what they are based on the information that we have about them, in order to target them and make what we are doing more customer-centric, utilizing digital channels. Admittedly, I know a lot of our banks are doing that, but I still think that there's some of our banks that need to get on board, even as it relates to things with EFT. One of the things that I'm hopeful, and you know I'm very passionate about this, that I would love to see all of our banks offering that EFT, electronic funds transfer, and Giselle spoke about some of that. So we know some of our banks are there, some are not yet there, but having all of our banks do that EFT. One of the things that I like to have conversation with my bankers about, and the bankers across the region, so even as we add all these digital channels, there's some banks that still they complain, so to speak, that there's still a lot of traffic in our banking halls. And this is more so towards our customers. We have to then determine, why are our customers coming into the banking hall? Is it that the products that we're offering are not marketed properly and they're not aware of them, or is it too expensive? We've heard of the complaint from the customers about the cost of the EFT. I would like to see that cost of EFT be as minimal as possible and to be as close to zero as possible, so that we have an uptake and we have more of our customers utilizing them. On the employer side, there's still a lot of the employees that are not doing direct salary deposits and utilizing the channels that we have through the ACH and the EFT. It would be wonderful if we have more, let's say 90% or more of our employers in the currency union utilizing that direct deposit channel, and stop issuing checks and so on. So we have the facilities, we have the infrastructure, but it's for us now to utilize it and utilize the digital channels. I two final points. I want to say, however, and a very big however, we have to build resilience. I would like to see a hardening of the information technology infrastructure, specifically as it relates to cybersecurity, to mitigate against all those cyber threats and those cyber frauds. And it's not just a commercial bank issue, but I think it's a more general issue within our society, where we share information and we have, if we call it a national council, whether across a regional council that deals with these cybersecurity issues, where we share information and we learn from best practice and so on. These things exist in the European Union and so on. And it's time for us to adopt these things in the currency union. Final point, our banks must be attuned to the needs of their customers in order to remain relevant. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for that. Richard, final word.
Governor, I endorse all that has been said by Chris and Giselle as far as what banks have been doing and what we need to do. And the point that Giselle made, I want to, transpose them over to the individual customers now in terms of the uptake of the digital channels, and to ensure that we maximize the convenience. As one guy says, you cannot have a mobile device in the palm of your hand and turn up in person at the telecom providers to pay a broadband bill. That makes no sense, right? You should be paying that, So we have the power in our hands is to convince, our customers as to how they can leverage the benefit of the information telecommunication technology and the banking software and platforms that exist. I just want to tell people that they should probably look for some opportunities coming through. I believe, Governor, that with the drop in revenue, there are loss-making state-owned enterprises that will make even bigger losses now and will be a drain on the central government. I think there should be a push for the privatization and give the people of the ECCU an opportunity to own shares in these enterprises, list them on the securities exchange, and move our financial space forward. That's an opportunity that will come out of this crisis. I hope it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. My heartfelt thanks to all of our panelists. I think you did a great job today. I believe that you've helped the people of our region with the information that you have imparted. And I believe that we are better placed to navigate this pandemic, which is the purpose of the digital dialogues. Of course, we must stay engaged. And so I want to encourage us to continue to work together in this period to ensure that we not just survive, but that we reposition our currency union to take advantage of the emerging opportunities. Richard said earlier, to do what we already do better. And I think digitization is one way of doing that, whether you're in business, banking, churching, whatever it is your occupation is. I think there are opportunities for us there. All that's left for me to do is to thank our viewers and listeners for joining us today. Without you, we cannot have this dialogue, and so we thank you for your participation, including your questions. We thank all of our radio and television partners who've joined us across the currency union. Again, thank you for the partnership. From my side, I certainly would like to thank my colleagues from the Central Bank who have supported this program. And I'd like to start with Dr. Emefor Siwador, who is the coordinator of the Dialogues program. Emefor works out of my office. Ms. Shamalan Kirby, who heads Director of our Corporate Relations Department. I also want to recognize Alston Crawford, Karina Phillips Summersall, Marlon Bristol, Shana Daniel, Olivia Langhorn, Shafari Challenger, Lyndon Jacasol, and I'm sure Carissa Senjus, and any other member of the ECCB team who worked on this today, either in the lead up or in today's production. Again, my thanks to all of you. And until next time, when we see you on Digital Dialogues, stay safe, stay engaged, and let's take action together. Thank you. God bless you all.